Hi, it's Gayle, Service Dog Q&A Friday, and here I am with Tomlin. Hey, Tomlin, it's because I get pointed out that it's his channel too. You'll see the little captions coming below right down here somewhere. So, Tomlin and I are going to talk about owner training versus getting a service dog trained through an agency, and how I decided to go with owner training plus help. Now, the ADA does allow for service dogs to be trained by their handler. That's perfectly fine and legal. And of course, you always want to check the ADA law before you make any decisions regarding anything to do with service animals. Make sure you know the law and what's allowed and what's not. So, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you that several of the things that we looked at when deciding to go with owner training versus going with an agency. For us, one of the things that I looked at was the length of time that it would take to be with an agency. Now, to train your service dog, you've got to allow 1.5 to 2 years. We decided to take that 1.5 to 2 years that it looked like I was going to wait at an agency and spend that looking for our own dog, and we could start training. Now, with us, the ironic thing is it took us almost 2 years to find Tomlin, because it's not a matter of just dashing out to the pound and picking out the first puppy that you see. There are some parameters and things that you have to keep in mind, and certain things that the dog has to be able to do. Now, you can research that online, but some of the things are, like, is the puppy afraid of loud noises? Does he seem interested? Is he naturally curious? Some of those kind of things. So I talked with some trainers, and I think I read just about every video online about owner training versus taking a service dog through an agency before coming to the conclusion that if we could find the right dog, that owner training was going to be the way to go. But if we could not find them, then we would definitely go through an agency and factor in the fundraising and how to do all that we needed. So we gave a lot of thought to what type of dog we wanted. And I knew that, or thought, we wanted a Husky and German Shepherd mix. So I talked with a trainer and found out what some of the characteristics are of the different breeds. And so they all seem to point to that. So one of the things that I would suggest if you're looking at owner training service dog, or if you're looking at getting a service dog from an agency, is your background and your skills, along with how much resources do you have in time, in money, and in commitment. Now, hear me out. We always have to have a commitment to our service dog. This is hello, Tomlin. This is a piece of medical equipment, and he's great, he's fluffy, he's lovable, but at the end of the day, he is a tool to help you live your life better. Now, there was a day when I absolutely could not function without him. Now, as he's gotten older and I've gotten better, some of that has switched, but that still doesn't change the fact that he is a medical tool. Now, here's the thing. Service dogs that are owner trained have a high tendency to wash out, okay? There's like 20% of them will not make it through service dog training. So one of the first things that my trainer sat down and talked to me about when we were looking at which way to go is, what would I do if it looked like he was going to wash out? Do I keep him and he becomes a pet and we chuck the whole service dog idea? Or would I be okay with rehoming him? Or what kind of plan were we going to have put together for him if he had washed out? Yeah, for you. So what we decided was, since we were getting him for a purpose, if he had washed out of training, we would just not have proceeded. We would have rehomed him, or would not have proceeded with him. We would have rehomed him, and he would have gone on to enhance somebody else's life. So that was a very difficult choice for me to make. It was something that was really hard to think about because you don't know that your service dog is going to wash out until you have put a year and a half of really hard work into training him. Oh, was I bothering your nap? I'm so sorry. So that was hard because obviously the ideal is that he'll make it. But that is one of the things that you get into when you're looking at service dog training yourself, having owner training versus training from an agency. If you go through an agency, you have a little higher possibility, that your service dog is going to make it. If you owner train, you don't have that same kind of assurance, so you have to decide early on, what are you going to do? With us, we felt like with all the friends that we have and the people that we know, probably it was not going to be difficult to rehome him to a quality home, especially with all the shots and the manners trainings and how to behave in public experiences that he already had. Who wouldn't welcome a dog that's already trained in some basic obedience, housebroken, all shots and records? So I felt like with the people we knew that rehoming him would be a good option. But I also had to realize that owner training him might come to that decision if we'd have to pass him on, and that going the owner training route would mean potentially starting over from the get-go with a brand new dog. Now, when I say owner training, you're also going to hear me say trainer. And that's because I don't have a huge level of skills with dogs. I have some skills. Of course, we've had dogs before, but the world changes completely when you go from a pet to a service dog, okay? So my strong recommendation is it's still owner training, but I would suggest working with a trainer because there are things that are going to come up that you think you know, but you don't. So trainers. They're expensive, but they're worth it. Now, at one point, we paid a private trainer quite a bit of money to help us. And what I saw was that trainers ranged in all kinds of prices, from the ones who did the basic, this is how you potty train your dog, on up to private one-on-one when you are by yourself and receiving that coaching just from one person with your one dog. Hey, so decide early on who you want to use. Go talk to that person. Compare, look at the people that are available. Get recommendations. Talk to your vet. Talk to your friends. Who has been happy with the training that they've gotten? Now, it might not have been service dog training that they went to a trainer for. They might have had just general behavioral things or wanted some agility training or things like that. That's okay, because what you're wanting is like a referral to a doctor's office where you may have a sore throat and you may need something major. So the more average things a lot of trainers can do, and so you want to start there, get your recommendations, because if you're going to own or train, you're going to need that. You're going to need that support. As far as an agency, they already have those in place. A service dog agency that will place a service dog already has everything in place. You don't have to worry about finding a trainer, picking out a time in your schedule, making that weekly commitment. Because if you're going to have a service dog that you're going to train whatever day it is, that is like your sacred day. You need to be at that service dog training appointment, come heck or high water, because it's important. You need to stay on the schedule. That also holds you accountable, because one of the things that the service dog trainer told me is that he wasn't so much training Tomlin as he was training me how to work with Tomlin. And that really proved to be pretty right. So keep that schedule and make sure you have time in your schedule, because if you don't have time in your schedule to commit to owner training, don't do it, because it's not cheap and it takes a long time, and you're going to have those resources and the backup. Sure, YouTube videos are out now and they're great, but they're not going to substitute from your one-on-one time with a trainer, and you're going to have that. So that's a huge consideration with your service dog training. So I would say look at your time, look at your level of comfortability with your dog. Are you used to being around dogs? Are you somewhat comfortable with a dog? Do you feel like you have the confidence? So I would look at that. I would consider where you live. If you may not, if you don't have a yard, for example, or if you don't have access to places where you can take your dog regularly, like going to stores, going to the mall if they'll let you, because all of those, because you have to be able to take your dog out regularly. He needs to be able to go to work with you. He needs to be able to go shopping with you. And so having access to that on a regular basis while you're in the especially early stages of your training, that seems to be huge. Our trainer hit that over our heads over and over and over again. You know, so look at where you live, look at the kind of dog you need, talk with your trainer, determine whether you feel like you have the confidence that it takes. The cost factor is still going to be there. There is this thinking that training your own dog is cheaper than getting one through the agency. I would argue that that's maybe not the case. The thing being, when you're talking about training your dog, you're talking about the gas to get to the lessons. You're talking about paying for the lessons. You're talking about that time commitment, the extra trips out to go and get him around people, things like that. That all adds up for cost. So when you're talking about cost, as far as involved with owner training versus agency, you're still going to put out money either way, okay? So look at all the factors and then decide which one's right for you. That's what ultimately matters, because you want a service dog at the end of the day that's trained, that's going to be able to help, and that you can rely on. So the biggest question is, what do you think? Is that going to be owner trained or going through an agency? Because both are valid and allowed under the law. As far as ada.gov is, go check that out for yourself. So what do you guys think? Which way do you go? Leave me a note in the comment below and tell me. And thanks for watching. And I'll see you guys out about and online. Don't be afraid to live bodaciously. Life is out there. Go get it. Thanks. Bye. Tom, when are you going to wake up, bud?